Welcome to the ILM Solutions Podcast, where we discuss self mastery, intentional living, and solution filled stories. I am so excited for today's episode because this is the first episode since the relaunch that we have a guest, and we're also recording on video. So make sure that you check out YouTube and follow, subscribe, all the things. I want to introduce my guest, but before I introduce her, I am going to talk a little bit about how we met because I want to truly highlight the power that is your energy and the energy that you put out into this world and how the universe matches it for you. And so, scrolling on TikTok, doom scrolling can benefits. So as scrolling on TikTok, sometime in January, February, I came across um I'm not gonna say her name yet. I came across her, and for me it was just energetic pull because the content that she shared felt very genuine, and she noticed that the community needed something, and she said, hey, you know what, I think that we should do a Zoom support, talk, chat, something, coffee, tea chat on Zoom. And as you know, with everything going on right now with the current administration in the world, especially January, February, around that time, this was much needed. And I'm sure it's needed again. But overall, I heard her state the call and I answered. I said, you know what? I'm gonna hop on this Zoom with this random girl that I've never met in my life, this random woman I've never met in my life. And we're just gonna vibe out. And it was a small group of us, and I have to say that it was really important for us as women to get together, especially Latina women to get together and really just dissect all that's going on and what it's showing up and what's surfacing. So Lillian, I want to thank you. Lily, I want to thank you for that. So, without further ado, this is our guest. Lillian Hernandez is a trauma-informed certified life and success coach, Reiki healer, self-published author, and podcast host. She empowers individuals to heal, grow, and reclaim confidence through holistic blend of mindset coaching, energy healing, and practical strategy. Through her platform, Empowered Alma, which she has, her social medias are Empowered Alma, and she also has a podcast as well, which is titled True Lessons. Lillian offers coaching for women, men, couples, and professionals in transition. Her work focuses on bringing through limitations and guiding clients toward their fullest potential. And her motto is have the audacity to believe in yourself. And I think that speaks to self-mastery, being able to believe in yourself. So I'm truly honored to have her here. You can check out her book, Empowered Alma, A Journey of Healing and Transformation, which is a coach's guide, and she's going to talk a little bit more about that today. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's funny, you're saying all of that. And when you introduced how we met initially, I felt goosebumps because we're still in that climate of being unsure, of so much noise, of so much division. And all of that can cause us to feel so very alone, weak, small, and is very insecure and nothing to do with being empowered. So it's the total opposite that we're feeling and experiencing to what I really work towards doing with clients, with people in general. And it's just a reminder that community is needed. Community is so needed more than ever. And it's so unfortunate that we're living in a time where the community is completely divided. I mean, I understand there's always been certain things in life, societal class, countries, but with the access to information that we have and the ability to access anyone in the world through things like this, like Zoom, it's sad that we're not connecting the way we should.
Mm, that's deep. That's deep.
Yeah.
I look at the time as 111 when you were saying that. So I was like, wow, like I think when it comes to being empowered, there's um a message that I get when I hear you talk because it's like there's a level of almost like obligation that we have to our communities to empower them in some way, shape, or form, right? And with technology changing, with everything that's going on right now, how do we
Right.
ensure that we are meeting our community how they need to be met, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's hard to reach out when we're going through our individual transitions and challenges, but it's not impossible. We're coming from such a place where we think we have to have it perfected in order for us to be a source for anyone. And I say that from experience because I had a lot of self-doubt where it was like, do I really talk about this? Do I put this out there? Everybody calls himself a master of something or a specialized in something or something of the sort. And it's having the audacity to believe that they can, and you don't have to have it 100% of the time, but there's something that we go through that we don't have to go through alone. But we need to have this sense of humility to be able to say, I'm going through this or I went through that, and now I can be a voice or a sounding board for someone because we don't always have to talk. We can listen too. And that alone can just be the support system that someone needs.
Hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like you've been able to compile some of those tips in a repurposeful way, you know, those life lessons, right? That you've experienced, whether it's through your book, whether it's through you know, the services and the events that you offer in New Jersey. You know, let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, what prompted you to say, you know, I'm gonna curate these events or I'm gonna create this book? I think a lot of times we get stuck in the pursuits of the things that we feel we have to do or we should be doing, and we don't complete them. And, you know, I think it's a very extraordinary thing when someone is able to be vulnerable, step outside their comfort zone, share their experience, and have it in a way that's um, a tool, right? The courses, the events, the book. So tell me a little bit about your journey, kind of where you started. I think I saw recently that you were a former teacher. I didn't know that about you. So go ahead, tell me a
Yeah.
little bit more about
I taught for 10 years in high school English, and I was an adjunct professor for about 2.5 years. And in that journey alone, I remember a lot of students used to want to come to me. And I'm like, why? Like I wanted to just get in there, teach the class, connect with them during the class. But now I'm like, it's my lunchtime. Like, no, this is my only 40 minutes I have to my entire day because once I leave work, I'm rushing to pick my kids up, take them to their sports and all these things. And so I was always like dried out. I'm like, I'm always giving. But it felt that when I was in the classroom, I was giving to kids who weren't really appreciating what I gave. They knew they just had to be there and they thought I just wanted to be there for just a check. And I'm like, no, like nobody goes into teaching for the check. Let's be
that.
freaking for real here. And I'm like, no, no. And if you're in New Jersey, you know the benefits are crap too. Like, no. But it was really hard to leave the classroom. But the last year I was in the classroom was a really horrible experience. And at that point, I had already started experiencing my own spiritual awakening. So I was like seeing through all the crap and seeing through all the nepotism and just through all the politics. And I was just like, wow, they really sell you a dream. And then we come in and we realize it's much more of a nightmare than it is a dream. So I slowly was stepping out because I was already building my coaching business. And I was already also just building up the courage and the feeling of empowerment that if I don't do it, I will never be able to do it. And that I did have other options and I didn't have to get stuck. And I was more married to my skills than my actual career. I was like, these skills can be easily transferable elsewhere. And I don't have to be locked in where I'm at now. And I had already gone through a lot of things. And I said, I don't have to necessarily be a teacher in a classroom. I could always teach and pass on wisdom to other people in different ways. And so I fully immersed into coaching and to expanding our logistics business at home and being there for my own children that needed me so much so. I mean, they were in high school when I decided to be there for them. I mean, technically, my son made that decision for me by really expressing himself in a way that was indirect, very clever, but I heard him. I heard him loud and clear that he needed me. And I said, if he needs me and he's a sophomore, my daughter needs me. And she was a freshman. So it was a little bit of everything that helped me make the decision to come out of teaching and go into coaching full force. And a lot of it had to do with my own experience at the retreats, the books that I read, the podcasts that I listen to, the services that were rendered to me through Reiki. And it saved my life. It saved my life. So if whatever I put out there free or whatever is of charge or whatever energy exchange I have, for me, it has to come from my soul and I receive it right to my soul. And so it's something that we need. It's something that's healing. It's something that's improvement. It's evolvement. It's to me, it's the evolution that we all need. And the sense that I got to want to live again, to live in my truth and to live with purpose is something everyone should feel. Everyone should experience that at some level. So I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep publishing. I'm going to keep trying to host events in New Jersey or elsewhere that I feel will reach the right people so we can make the best out of the connections that we endure each day.
I love your testimony, your journey. Thank you for sharing that. For anyone who's listening or watching, I, invite you to ask yourself where in your life do you maybe need to self-reflect, evolve in some way, empower yourself to take certain steps because it's not easy to make career pivots. And that's also a topic that I am probably like I geek out about because that is what I do also outside of this is helping students, career services and things like that, and helping people leverage their transferable skills in, certain ways. And sometimes people don't really know how to do that. And
Mhm.
so let this be a testimony that your skills are transferable, whether you want to go into a different field or you want to create your own lane or do both, because sometimes that's okay also.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think out of your journey, right? Whether it was the career pivot or your spiritual awakening or even anything that you have experienced. Do you think that there was something that maybe happened to you? I don't believe in coincidences, so my question is really like, can you share something that you realized happened for you and not just to you? Obviously we don't want to minimize anything that happened to you, but something that was like it was a lesson, like a blessing in disguise in the end.
I'll tell you that I'm gonna come back to the last year that I was teaching and the very intense relationship that I didn't get to build with a supervisor. It was such a dichotomy. The relationship I was unable to establish with him was because he was a true narcissist. And his narcissism traits were something that I had dealt with my own father. And so it was creating this block and I was working so much on myself. And I'm like, I see right through him. And I wasn't letting it get to me personally, but he was getting to my intern because I had a full year intern with me. And she was considering her entire career based on how he was. Because she was wondering, like, if all, and I'm like, no, they're not all like that. Not all supervisors, not all superiors are like that. Not everybody in education is like that. But it was so discouraging. I was able to handle it, and she wasn't. And it just made me realize that in life, I'm always going to have to face people that are like that and that it's not my fault and I don't deserve that kind of treatment. And so it has nothing to do with my worth. It has nothing to do with the value that I bring to the table. It had nothing to do with it. And it had everything to do with them. And so he really wanted a reaction out of me, and he wasn't getting it. He really wanted me to like force myself to look crazy to meet him at his level, and I wasn't. And that drove him insane. And so he really tried to drive me out of the district and saying that I was insubordinate. I was really hard to work with. And I'm like, I'm in my 10th year in the classroom. I've never had an issue like this ever. And all my children, like all my students were great. We had no issues. I mean, whatever it was, to me, it was teaching me. it was pushing me out of where I didn't belong in the first place. And it also told me that just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I have to do it. And I know that I went into teaching because it felt like that was the highest thing I could ever achieve in my life. When I was probably in third grade, I was sitting in my living room doing some math homework, extra math, because I didn't feel good with math when I was a kid. I felt like if I got a C or something, like I was like, oh my God, I am not smart. This sucks. Like I need extra help. So I asked the teacher to give me a couple of sheets for extra practice from a workbook she had, just for me to kind of continue to practice math. And my dad told me, what are you doing? And I said, oh, it's not homework, it's extra practice because I don't have any homework today. And he said, oh, you're so smart. Like, you're going to make a really good secretary one day. And coming from a man who didn't pass middle school, I think his highest grade level was like fourth or fifth grade in the Dominican Republic. And so at that time, I'm thinking, secretary? I was just like, okay, I'll be someone's secretary because, hello, it's my dad telling me what my potential is, right? So I'm believing that the man in my life who provides and who protects knows what to do. And so in my mind, I was like, yeah, I could be a secretary. And so I remember years coming through, I would talk to my teachers and like, why not just be a teacher? Like, why a secretary? You could teach. Like, you like to help students. You like to learn. Like, that might be your thing. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And so in my mind, I was like, I'm going to prove my daddy wrong. I'm not going to be a secretary. I'm going to be a teacher. And when I was going through all of this and I saw the parallels between this supervisor and my father, who's not in my life, because I absolutely put boundaries in later on in my life, I was like, wait, this is the same person. The same lesson keeps coming up, telling me this is the max I could do. And it was a reminder, like, am I a little girl? Am I going to let them do this? Like, so it was very emotional to transition out of something that I worked so hard for
Mhm.
and cut the cord when I was still interviewing, because at some point I actually went for my master's in education administration and had my principal certification, supervisor certification. So a lot of things that he was doing, I was like, that's not even legal. So I was like, what are you doing? What's happening here? And I know at that time it was happening for me because I wanted a different lifestyle for myself. But if he had not pushed me out, I would still be there questioning, could I do what I really wanted to do on a
Mhm.
daily and be there as a full figure parent for my children in the most pivotal times of their lives and their transitions into adulthood. So I'm so happy looking back. And even in then, I was just like, you're not getting to me. And I was wondering, why is he not getting to me? And I just knew, being so in tune with source, it was happening for me. And I just had to let it go and just be grateful for the experience and move forward.
Wow. And that level of self-awareness, I feel like there's two blessings here. There's the blessing of that pressure. That pressure makes diamonds, right? That pressure that you felt, led you to where you are now. But in hearing your story, I think it also helped you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to put words or feelings, towards anyone, but it's almost like it also helped you to recognize that pattern, that deep-rooted pattern that
Yes.
may still show up in ways
Yes.
and places in your life, and how to like regulate, like, I'm not that little girl anymore. That's not my dad, and I think for listeners, or people who are listening or watching, I want you to recognize where that might be showing up in your life. I actually recently had a situation like that where I'm like, oh, that's the pattern here. This person's doing this
Hmm.
and this person's doing this. Like, hold on, let me take it to a professional, or let me journal about it.
Yes.
Because those things do show up. I think that when it comes to being able to live intentionally, you have to be able to erase those narratives that maybe were pushed on us as a child, right? Um, Parents, if you're listening, be mindful of how you talk to your children. Be mindful of the things that you tell them, or you give them that light of, oh, this is what you're meant to be doing. You don't know what door that could be opening in their mind or subconscious, right? For you, it was like, wow. I'm not enough, more enough to do something different. I'm gonna be just a secretary. And not that being a secretary is wrong. Shout out to all the administrative
Yes.
assistants out
We
there,
need them.
but
We love them.
it is language is important,
Yeah.
and being able to understand how the things that people around us have told us, how we internalize them, how they influence the decisions that we make in our lives, especially as 18-year-olds going to college, trying to figure out what we're going to major in or what we're going to do with our lives. Like
Mhm.
all of that is important. And I think that being able to detach from the noise or the expectations of what someone else puts on you,
Mhm.
right? Sitting with yourself, sitting with source,
Mhm.
that's when you're able to tap in and recognize, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to be here right now, even though I'm great at it, right? I have a similar story as a former psychotherapist. I was a great psychotherapist, an EAP counselor, but that time for me, it was my time to pivot, you know? And sometimes in life, you find that you make several pivots, right? I'm sure you found in your branding, in your business that you're like, ah, this isn't really working, but you know what? Let me do this. This name doesn't really work. You know what? Let me launch
Yes.
this.
Yes.
And that's okay too. So tell me a little bit about, how you continue to kind of live intentionally or what self-mastery like means to you as it relates to where you are in your life right now.
You're never going to master something 100%. Like there's always growth and room for improvement. There's always something new. I love that about life. Every day we're surprised with how intentional living, that's what it teaches you. And when you're living in purpose and on purpose, everything is connected. Like you said earlier, nothing is coincidence. And it's it's amazing because it leaves such an opportunity for the universe to show you who you are instead of you trying to always find yourself when you're not lost. And so it's an amazing experience to see the connections that I can make today because I have more of an open heart. I'm not going to say I have a full open heart because I'm constantly working on myself and constantly triggered and superhuman and super informed. And I try not to be, but something pulls me towards understanding the world outside of me because I don't live alone. I live in a world where we are all trying to figure something out right now. And so much is happening so fast. And I'm trying to make sense of what's going on in my own life. And I'm like, this feels like a huge glitch in the matrix. Time is going so fast. And nothing really makes sense anymore. The more I try to be logical about it, the more it just doesn't make sense because I'm like, who does that? And why is this happening? And I've always been a why girl. Why? And some things I'm just leaving it to the universe to show me later and say, okay, listen, I have this question. I don't have to get deep into this research, spend years trying to understand it. But this is the question, universe, and you answer me when I'm ready for it. And that's it. I'm just kind of
Yeah,
like leave it to God. That's how I
yeah.
feel.
That's powerful. Even with everything going on right now, you can take that mindset and ask yourself, you know, is this for some sort of greater good that we cannot see right now? And that's very hard to sit with, very hard to try to grasp, but it does allow to kind of take a deep breath and release that control because unfortunately there are things that we don't have control, most things in life. And so what do you think is one tool that you use that helps you to kind of like pull yourself back when you may be going back towards like old patterns or find yourself maybe ruminating about the negative and not giving it to God or giving it to source, you know?
I sit with myself. I have like little rituals where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sage, I'm gonna put my incense on, I'm gonna put like music that's more inclusive of indigenous beats, and I'm shutting the lights off and I'm putting out whatever. I have a couple of like tarot and oracle and cards like that, and I bring out my journal and I'm bringing out my Floridian water, and I'm just sitting with me and like using all the tools I have in 3D to be able to connect outside of this dimension and sit with it. And whatever message comes to me that day, whether it's I have to journal on this, I ask the questions on paper, I get these answers in my readings. Like I'm not going to someone else. I'm literally just tapping like, all right, I need that direct hotline to source. And back to me, calling that energy back to me and just sitting with it instead of overthinking or talking to other people about it and trying to find the answer in someone else's journey. It's not about their journey, it's about mine. And when I sit with myself, it's extremely powerful. I feel recharged. I feel like I went to another planet. I mean, it's almost quantum leaping that I experience. And it sounds probably extreme to those who haven't been able to tap into that or have and don't really know that they've been there before. But it's very euphoric to just sit with self and to just wash your hands, wipe them clean and just surrender.
Mhm.
But that takes a lot of work to get there. I mean, it really, you got to drop your pride and your ego and just sit there. And these walls that we build are good when we're building boundaries, but you shouldn't have a boundary with self. And a lot of us do that. And that boundary is like limited to your connection to self, or it's so limited to your mind to open. I mean, even the breath work itself is so healing, and we forget to do that. We're just doing it on survival mode, but we're not doing it intentionally to live
Mhm.
on purpose. And we forget that that's a huge possibility in life.
Yeah, I had to take a deep breath before we started recording. You saw me. So, I definitely want to encourage people to take heed to, your tools because, while they may not be the average tools that someone uses, people like us, you and I, we use these tools. That might not be your tool, and that's okay. What are your tools, right? What do you need to do when, you find yourself slipping into old patterns and you need to pull yourself back, right? Maybe that's going for a walk or being in nature, right? For some people, that might be going to the house of whomever they believe in, and
Mhm.
that's all right too. And so, what those tools are, I do want to highlight is that they change over time too. They change with our life stage, they change with our lifestyle, and it sounds like you've been able to self-master that for yourself and recognize like this is what helps me and this is what I need. There was something that you said earlier that I was like, she need to repeat that deep. It was I wanted to write it down. I was like a quote, something about we try to find ourselves, but like we don't need to be
Another,
finding ourselves. We're already found in a sense. Like we
yeah,
already
yeah,
here. There's
yeah.
no like what are we
We're not
trying to
lost.
get to?
Yeah. We're not lost. We're taught to believe we're lost so we can look externally for these answers and be dependent on what's on 3D. Because if we do that, we're never going to be able to levitate and leave this dimension that is so stuck on the things that are harming us.
Yeah. It's very tough, especially as a connected spiritual person, right? How do you balance that duality, right? Because oftentimes when it comes to spiritual awakenings in the spiritual community, I sometimes tend to see people hyper focused on that part of
Mhm.
themselves, that identity of themselves. And, where is the balance of duality? Because we are humans, right?
Mhm.
Spirits in a physical vessel.
Right.
And we came on this earth, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, we reincarnated on this earth. We are here to do something, and
Hmm.
then our time in this life cease to exist. But do we cease to exist? I mean, that's a whole nother podcast episode, but I'm not trying to go that deep today. But how do you balance that duality, right? Like I'm in human form. I'm not trying to get locked and stuck in this matrix. I see it, but I kind of have to work it to my favor,
Yeah.
and I also have to like balance and recognize that I'm a spiritual being. Like we are
Yeah.
all spiritual beings,
Yeah.
whether you're spiritual or not, you
Mhm.
know?
I
So,
think one of them is not judging anyone else for how they do things. It's really, really important because whether, like, I'll tell you right now, I like a stiff drink. I like a really good whiskey. Give it to me double, give it to me neat. I'm gonna sip on this for a while. I'm not taking it back like that because I do enjoy the taste and the experience of it. But I don't have to take back half a bottle. I don't have to take back, let me drink it with this to get the buzz. It's not the buzz. For me, it's the experience. Now, I know that um, other people need to finish that bottle that day or that weekend or whatever. I'm not here to judge you for that. You need that. I don't. I'm good. I don't need that. So understanding we all have different needs, fine. Um, could it be abusive to self if I do what they're doing? Yeah, but that's why I have free will. That's why I have choice. And I'm choosing not to do that for me. And if it's somebody I love and I know they probably are harming themselves, you bring it to their attention, but it's not your job to fix them. So I know one that helps me is not judging other people for how they choose to deal with this mess in 3D. Like, I get it, I understand it. I just don't have that need to do it. However, I come from a line of people who that's exactly what they look for to deal with the mess all the time. And through that, they cause a lot of trauma that then trickles down to why I had to deal with a lot of it in turn.
Mhm.
And so I just choose to not do what they're doing or what they did that came down to me. And I say, okay, like I know in my bloodline, alcoholism is a really big thing. So I'm choosing not to get to the point of ever being an alcoholic. I know it's discipline, I know it's a hard choice, but that's it. But I do like a drink. So if I'm going to have a drink, I'm never going to feel guilty about it because why should I? If I feel guilty, it means I'm doing something wrong. And in 3D is not, and I'm human. In 7D, it might create a bigger gap between me and source, or it might just narrow it down and make me more connected. We don't know until we experience things and how it'll affect us. But that's like I said, number one is not judging other people, and two, knowing that I'm not doing it because I need to function. I'm doing it because I want to be here and connect to my 3D right now because I
Yeah.
am sharing space on earth with other human beings. And yes, it is social. And yes, it is a physical want. When I'm like, shoot, I'm cooking. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have a little bit of tequila today, and I'm gonna enjoy this meal while I feel this experience. And that's it. I'm cool. I'm done. I ate my dinner. I cooked. I cleaned. I'm good. Next day to the gym. My routine. Cool. But it's really important to really understand that even if you are a very spiritual being and you choose not to engage in what we engage in the 3D, is fine. But judging someone tells me that you want to do that too. And
Mhm.
you're holding yourself back from being present and the 3D. Like you're,
Wow.
you're trying to
Yeah.
escape it too,
Hmm.
somehow.
Yeah, I know when it comes to substance abuse or substance use in general, whether it's the person or the people around them, it impacts it all. And I know that it can be a hard thing for those who are experiencing alcoholism, and
Mhm.
so they need people in their corner that's going to be non-judgmental and also supportive, but also with boundaries because you have to be able to say, hey, well, you're doing that, but I cannot be a part of that.
Right.
But
Hmm.
I'm not judging you, and that's okay. But however, when it comes to those individuals that you
Impact.
love them and
Yeah.
it's impactful, then, those hard, serious conversations are warranted.
Yes.
And, for anyone who is struggling with substance abuse, if you're listening, like definitely seek out some professional support. It's definitely something that can impact your entire life in so many different ways. I actually used to do like substance abuse counseling, so those were some of the clients that I worked with that were that I saw it impact several components of their wellness as well as all areas of their lives. So, but I
Yeah.
think it's beautiful when we can like find that balance, and not judge ourselves either. So I think that
Right.
that's something too, like, oh, I shouldn't because, I'm seen as this and I'm I identify as like, whatever it is spiritual, I shouldn't be doing this. Like we shouldn't be speaking to ourselves in those ways. We came
Mhm.
to this earth to experience
Yes.
this existence. So
Yeah. Yeah.
experience it. You got your vice, it's not harming nobody, not
Yeah.
harming yourself.
Yeah.
You know how to balance it, then we're good.
Ding, ding, ding. You win.
Yeah, and especially if you have some healthy
Yes.
healthy coping skills or
Yes.
mechanisms as well.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
So let's dive into your book because I'm sure you talk. I haven't read it yet, but I'm gonna need a copy. But I'm
Yeah.
sure you talk about, your journey. It's a guide as a coach. So tell us about your book. where can people find it? Your journey writing it?
Yeah.
Uh,
It took me a solid 3 years to write it. Um, I probably wrote 20 something chapters and ended up with, I think, 9 or 10. And a few of them were rewritten various times. I am an English major, so it did come easy to me to put my thoughts to paper, and I've always been in love, infatuated with reading and writing. So the process itself was fun. Like just today, I'm gonna go to the Barnes and Noble, and I'm gonna sit at the Starbucks, and I'm gonna be there for like 5 hours and write. Or sometimes I was like, I'm gonna go to the local coffee shop, or I'm just gonna sit in the sunroom today and spend the whole day doing this. So that was fun, knowing that I was on my own timeline. But what was most impactful was going back and talking a little bit. I tried not to talk so much about me, but instead give like a little bit of a just a story behind how I got to where I got to and provide examples. I don't cry anymore. I don't sit and let that experience or memory come to the present time. It was the other way around. I was able to use it strategically and talk about it. And to me, that's the biggest sign of growth is like when you can talk about something without choking up anymore, you're like, okay, I'm over it.
yeah.
Like, and it's a reminder that we can get over the hardest things that happen to us. And like, if I could do that, and I remember how it hurt, like anybody can do it. Because a lot of times we do get stuck in our bodies, we get stuck in our heads, we get stuck in our hearts, and we continue to break our own hearts by repeating certain things and not really knowing how to get out of it. And sometimes we just need to trust timing, keep doing the work, and trust that with time, things will hurt a little less, not because time alone it's happening, but because you're putting in the work already and that energy is gonna come back to you accordingly. But writing it was very intense. There were times where I was like questioning, do I really want to talk about this in
Mhm.
public? And I'm like, I have to. I'm like, I have to, because if I don't, then I'm not really writing this as someone who is empowered. And in order for
Mm.
someone to be empowered, you really have to come with truth and honesty. And there were some things I purposely didn't put because I didn't want to expose some of my loved ones.
Mhm.
They were not prepared for me to talk about this too. So I
Mhm.
had to honor their wishes. And I knew to what extent it shouldn't be. So I had to also exercise caution. But when it came to my emotions, my feeling, my perspective, it's all out there. So I'm not afraid of being vulnerable. I can talk all day about all the crap I've been through and whatever, just to kind of help other people understand we've all been at a really tough spot and you can make it out. We don't have to necessarily have experienced the same thing, but we've all experienced loss, some sort of abuse, some sort of grievance and abandonment, some kind of trauma, and we could all connect on that level. But how many of us can really connect at a higher level? Once we've gotten through all of that, how many of us can really come together and help other people and just build friendships and connections and beautiful experiences together and memories? Like, how many of us can actually do that is, I think, the biggest like question.
And I think the beauty from that is that what we have gone through, right? Being able to put it on paper, it now helps others. That beauty of it helping others, and that beauty of you being able to be like, you know what, that happened, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
was probably fucked up. It was I probably should be cursed, but whatever. It was messed up. It was all these
I'm
things.
glad you did because I was like, I was ready to drop one early. I was like,
It is what it is. Sorry, listeners. Um, I'm like losing my train of thought. But no, at the end of the day, it's like that it goes back to the concept of like maybe this happened for me for this reason, to me for this reason, so that I can evolve from that space and show other people you can too, you know? And I know that you work with a lot of women. So for those of you who want to know her book, it's on Amazon, Empowered Alma, which is soul for those of you who don't know the translation. A journey of healing and transformation, a coach's guide to inner transformation. Definitely check that out on Amazon. In your work with women or in your work with people in general. I see your content all the time on my TikTok. I'm sure you guys follow her. You give advice to women. And I wanted to ask you this question. What's one piece of advice that you find yourself repeating that it's like you might be at an event that you're hosting, or you might be having one-on-one clients, or even people in your life. It's like the same theme or the same advice that you find yourself repeating. Maybe it's a quote. What is your go-to?
I think it's the fact that as women, and I think there's some men that relate to this, but as women generally, we're taught to give all the time. Like our purpose here is to serve. Our purpose here is to give life, take care of life, give, like to create a multiple sense of something. But we're never really taught how to recharge, how to give to ourselves first before we do give to others. It's like, especially as a Latina,
Mhm.
I was taught cook and serve your man, right? I'm like, hold on. Like, not even too long ago, I'm like, how am I? I'm picking the meal, I'm cooking this meal, and I'm the last one to eat. Question mark, question mark. I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm like, wait, like you question the culture, you question tradition, you question this ode to tradition that is such a logical fallacy. And I'm like, this makes no sense. I'm like, if anything, I should be served first. I should serve my plate first because I cooked it. And I think as women, we need to really learn to give to self before we give to anyone else because we're giving from empty cups and then we're having other people trying to fill them and they never can. They could never fill your cup. We're almost setting up our families, our partners, our everybody for failure because hello, we want them to fill a cup that we haven't filled ourselves. And so we need to learn the real act of self love. Yes, self care is one thing, self love is another.
Mhm.
Okay, you took a shower, you washed your hair, you got dressed, you got your makeup on. That's it. That's all you're giving yourself. That's it. Are you working out? Are you meditating? Are you giving yourself that time that are you working towards your goals or are you always
Mhm.
working to ensure that you're supporting everyone else's goals? So I think it's important, especially nowadays. Like, have your goals, have
Yeah.
your individualism in your world because that's the only way you're going to be able to survive throughout however long you're here on earth. And so, being dependent emotionally on someone else is almost obsolete for a woman, but we kind of tend to do that anyway. So, what do we go to? Romantic novels and movies and friends and things that we think we can rely on. But in reality, it's you. It starts with you. So I always come back to that piece of advice to women is keep doing that. You're a woman,
Mhm.
so by nature, you're going to want to nurture, but make sure that you're doing it for yourself first. It doesn't make you selfish, it makes you human.
Awesome. I love that. I think I that message right there, I was like, I need to cut that, and that needs to be on the front page of your website or something, because a lot of people need to hear that. Even people right now who are listening, like, where are you not prioritizing yourself? I just saw a post recently where it was a therapist who was talking about being afraid or having guilt around calling out of work. She was sick. You could see her visibly sick on her video.
Wow.
And it's like this guilt that we carry, especially as Latinas, where we feel like if we're not productive, then we're less than in some way. Or there's some shame or judgment, or even fear if you have, a parent that when you grew up would open the door and like yell at you if you are found idle, not doing nothing, vete a limpiar, vete
Mhm.
something, and
Especially as a woman.
yes, and for us, those things are internalized where it's like, I can't be sitting still, I can't be idle, I have to be busy all the time, I have to always be in a space of moving and doing for others, and you're not pouring that back into yourself. And it's like, you're not going to show up at 100% for anybody. Nothing in your life is going to be okay and great if you are not okay and great. It's going to reflect. And I definitely feel that boundaries is huge with that because you have to place boundaries with people in our lives who don't understand that you have to take the time for yourself. So for anyone listening, I hope that this is a message to get clear on your goals, to get clear on how to prioritize yourself, to place those boundaries with people in your life who maybe don't benefit from you prioritizing yourself and they want to stop you from doing that. Remember that at the end of the day, like you cannot pour into like you can't pour from an empty cup.
No,
So
ever, ever. Impossible. Gonna run
so
dry.
thank you so, so much. Is there anything that you want to share with the people that or the listeners that we haven't had a chance to talk about, or just share how people can connect with you one last time?
I think that we are in a stage in America where we need to wake up and we need to stop, I think, just completely dividing ourselves based on what already is done. If you voted a certain way, if you think a certain way, or you thought a certain way, let's move forward and become solution focused and work together because there's power in numbers. And have faith, don't give up, be Delulu, and keep managing the way you have or better. Look for ways that you could improve, look for ways to reconcile. I mean, there's so much happening in the world, and you never know when your time is up. So don't take the time we have here for granted. We're here for several purposes, not just one. So be intentional about everything you say and everything you do because every day is an opportunity to be better. So choose better. Why not? And
Awesome. Thank you for that.
thank you for having me here. I think you covered my book. My podcast is called True Lessons that I haven't had guests on for a while. I've been very inconsistent with. So when I do come back to it at some point, I would love to have you on. And just,
Awesome. So make
I
sure you
love
guys
it.
subscribe to her podcast. If you're not subscribed to this one, make sure you do that because I'm gonna be on hers as well.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
And again, make sure you follow her. Just name all the platforms that you're on with your handle.
So I am on YouTube as Empowered Alma, TikTok Empowered Alma, Instagram and Facebook as Empowered Alma. Probably LinkedIn is the only one I have there as Lillian Hernandez. But everywhere else, it's Empowered Alma. My name is Lillian Hernandez, and my podcast is called True Lessons. That's my baby. I love my podcast, but I really haven't given it much attention. And I was just enjoying the book process, and once it was
Mhm.
released, I was enjoying life itself and the transition of my kids now both in college. So
Totally
it,
understand that. Thanks for holding me accountable to my own episodes. So, obviously, I've been trying to stay on top of it. So, for those of you who are listening in, look out for episodes once a month, typically towards the end of the month. And if you didn't do your new moon ritual or your new moon journaling for this week because there was a new moon, make sure that you go ahead and do that. And of course, you can grab my journal, moon journal, to help you along with that, my self-love journal, and also Healing My Four Bodies. Make sure you grab Lily's book. All
right.
right, everyone, keep living with intention and be sure to follow me on TikTok, ILM_solutions, and also on YouTube. And as always, live with intention. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.